Hey, welcome back to another episode of Scale Busters. Coming up today,
how you can most successfully succeed in that scaling and how scaling makes you stronger. Go kind of global from day one and then figure out through a little bit trial and error, where you go next and how this will kind of really pan out the work. As you go through life, you should focus on making your passion more and more aligned with what you spend your majority of your time on, right? And if you think through that in the macro perspective,
Magnus is a serial entrepreneur who's now turning his knowledge and experience into a company called Antler, which is basically a venture builder. It's a program which recruits 50 to 100 entrepreneurs every single cohort in cities around the world. And they actually pay them over a 10-week program to learn to create ideas for massive problems that can scale globally. Then at the end of a 10-week program, once they've match-made them into co-founding teams with fantastic ideas, these teams pitch, and they actually fund them. If they like the ideas, they will fund them up to $150,000, and then they'll enter into an accelerator program run by Antler 2 for 3 to 6 months or so. At the end of that, if they love what you've created, if they like the MVP and the product you built, they'll invest in you further. They've currently just raised a large fund, I think it's $60 million, to invest in those companies. And I know they've had amazing success in some of their programs around London, Amsterdam. I know they're launching Berlin in 2021, and as well as, of course, Oslo, Stockholm, and they even have one in Singapore. So these guys and girls are amazing at recruiting entrepreneurs. They know what to look for, and specifically, they know how to scale, both themselves as well as teaching people to scale startups. So today we're going to talk to Magnus about how to scale and the 3 things that you should really focus on and ask yourself before you approach a scaling phase. Magnus, welcome to the show, mate. Let's get right into it.
Yeah, let's get started. Perfect.
All right, Magnus, you recruit entrepreneurs around the world. You have thousands of applications for your programs in all the major cities. What are the 3 main traits you look for in entrepreneurship?
So 3 things. Number 1, a spike. This is something that you're better at than most other people. And, I think everyone is born with kind of an underdeveloped spike that is a strength that they have inherently, and they can work on developing into a spike, meaning this can be anything from being great with people, being a great leader, being inspirational, or it could be that you can go really deep into a project or a subject matter, or it could be that you're a great coder, like just finding a strength and a spike. Like most founders are quite spiky individuals, and you're not born with that. It's something you develop. Second thing is drive. The ability to execute and make things happen. Drive is very linked to passion. If you're truly passionate about something, then you're typically kind of driven to make it happen. So that's where I would start to kind of create your drive is through having that passion. And then the second part then is finding out like what makes you tick, like what really makes you work incredibly hard to make things work, and through personal impact, making things happen. That's number 2, drive. And the third is grit. And this is probably the most overlooked one, right? There's a tremendous amount of exceptional entrepreneurs out there who have great spikes and a ton of drive, but they give up. And a lot of great businesses failed because they couldn't break through that last barrier, or they gave up when their second rocket exploded, or whatever it is. That grit is incredibly important. All great entrepreneurs can tell you about kind of 5, 6, 7 times their business could have died, or where they were really, really struggling. And the people who really succeed are the ones who have staying power and decide that failure is not an option.
So Antler, since it started only 2 years ago, has scaled from Singapore to Stockholm. Now you're in Amsterdam, Berlin opening, and a lot of other cities. So my question to you is, what is the Antler approach to scaling?
So I think there's a number of different ways to scale. I think one thing that is incredibly important is to think through how you can most successfully succeed in that scaling and how scaling makes you stronger, right? And there are a number of effects in place there which will inform you in terms of how you should scale. So for example, I was a co-founder of Zalora.com, which is an e-commerce company. It's pretty clear that when you build an e-commerce company where you have to invest in distribution, in supply sourcing, in warehouses, in technology, and a number of different things that you need scale to even make it work, right? So it's kind of like scale or die. So the effect, the truth of those types of businesses is that you should aim towards scaling as quickly as you possibly can, and you need to ensure that you attack several markets at the same time. Or if you're in a big market, that you go towards that entire market. So for example, for Norwegian startups, the Norwegian market will typically not be big enough for these types of businesses. You need to approach Europe or the world. If you're in the US, it might be different. If you're in India, it might be different. If you're in China, it might be different because you have big enough internal markets. So that's one way of scaling, which is just, okay, you got to attack a big market immediately because the business model just doesn't work subscale. So that's what we did in Zalora. With Antler, it's different because we are in the business of supporting exceptional founders build great companies. And we could support a number of exceptional founders in one location, and we could stick to doing that. The advantages of scaling Antler and us having built a global platform is we become much stronger if we're truly global. Because what are the things that founders want? They want to have access to other great co-founders. Now, our experience is that great co-founders come from all across the globe. So for example, if you're building something in Norway as Norwegian, you might find your amazing product builder in Germany as a great co-founder. The other thing is competency centers lie in different areas. So for example, in Singapore, they have very strong competency centers around trade, around shipping, around some medtech specific things. In Norway, there's tremendous competency centers around energy, renewable energy, all these things. In Boston, Cambridge, you have tremendous AI expertise. The world's best engineers within different areas lies in different things. So by us scaling, we get access to these competency centers. The other thing is entrepreneurship is truly global in the way that people have different ideas all across the globe, but very seldom will nobody else have had that idea. So typically when you start building something, if you have a global presence, you can literally present 10 to 20 to 30 to 40 other teams working on something similar. And that informs you into making a better business model and more accurately validating your business model before you start building. And there are a number of other advantages as access to customers, access to investors. Like there are a bunch of investors across the globe. They don't invest in a single geography. They invest globally within a theme. And we have access to all of those by being global. So Antler's expansion is very much around the network effects of being global, and how by us being global, by adding new people to the partnership, new people to our advisory network, new people to our venture partner network, by having access to more ideas, more data, we can provide better services and be a better partner to our founders and the teams that we invest in than we would have been if we only operated in one location. So it's like two different ways of looking at it. I think the most important thing to think through when you think about scaling is like, what is the truth for you? And then ensure that whatever you do, scaling makes you stronger and not weaker. Because some people will kind of scale, and then you end up having a set of kind of very limited resources that still have to do the same thing but serve more customers. And then they will end up dying because of the scaling. So I think it's a very important question and important to think through and think through why you need to scale and how to do it and become stronger through doing it.
All right, so the big question is, you're about to enter the scaling phase. You're a startup, you're 1, 2, 3 years in. What are the questions you should ask yourself before you enter that scaling phase? Because scaling is not exactly right for every company. Not all softwares, not all companies can scale. So Magnus, what are the top 3 things you should ask yourself before you enter the scaling phase?
Yeah, so I think, first of all, we like to work with entrepreneurs who want to solve big problems, right? So first of all, you need to, it's kind of a little bit determined when you decide what you want to build, right? So, if you want to build a Michelin star restaurant, that is almost unscalable as a concept. right? It's just very hard to build 100 Michelin star restaurants. You can perhaps build 2 or 3. I think that's probably the world record or something like this that people have achieved. However, if you want to build a type of plant-based, better tasting meat that is served in all the Michelin star restaurants across the globe, plus all of the other premium restaurants, that's a truly scalable idea. So that's number one. Like, think through what you're building, because some things are just not scalable, right? Another great example is if you're a consultancy, right? I mean, you can scale a consultancy by hiring new and other great people similar to yourself, but you scale that over decades because you're required to bring on board people who are as strong or stronger than yourself, because you can't divide your own time much more than you already do. So that's number one, the idea. And sure, the idea is truly scalable. If you try to scale something which you can't scale, that will just end up, as you said, Matt, in miserable failure. So that's it's number one. Number two is think through whether you want to, do, multiple kind of new locations at once, or the whole world at once, or if you go kind of market by market. And that also very much depends on your business model. Like, if you're a B2B SaaS company, or let's say you're a gaming app, or whatever, which means that your sales structure and sales strategy is very scalable, then you can serve the world immediately, because your product is more or less kind of ready to be used all across the globe immediately. If your product needs customization, so for example, the e-commerce example before I gave it Zalora, when we scaled into a new market, our logistic infrastructure was different, the payment infrastructure was different, the type of products people buy were different, even some of the marketing channels were different. So we had to customize the product per market that we launched into. It still had tremendous synergies across a lot of different things that we're doing, but for things that need some customization, going market by market is better than doing everything at once. But if you have very little customization, you can literally go kind of global from day one, and then figure out through a little bit trial and error, where you go next, and how this will kind of really pan out to work out. So I think that's number two. And then I think I think number three advice I would give, there's a ton of other advice, but number three advice I would give is, go back, like if you're in the early days of thinking about what you should do, like, why not do something scalable? It's incredibly exciting, right? I know for some people that's not the case. Like you're happy with doing something smaller. But hey, we live in a world today where, 100 million plus people just lost their job. Economies have fallen 15 to 25%. We still have hundreds of millions of people in the world that are, unbanked, below the poverty line, don't have access to the necessary healthcare. There's just so many opportunities out there to have kind of a real impact. So I think, I would go back to number one on this: choose to spend your time on something that you can truly scale.
All right, Magnus, you built companies for over a decade now in Southeast Asia and across lots of different markets, including your own home one in Nordics. So the big question I want to know is, from your own personal entrepreneurial journey, what's the biggest lessons you've learned, and what are your main entrepreneurial takeaways?
I mean, obviously you learn a lot. I think my number one learning is a little bit of what I spoke about earlier. It's just like understanding kind of how you best should scale based on what type of business model that you have, right? And if it requires a lot of customization, you should really do kind of market by market, and then you focus in on the markets that matters the most first, right? So if you take Southeast Asian example, and you're operating in Singapore, then Indonesia is just very next door, and it's by far the biggest economy, or it's by far the amount of most customers that you can serve kind of close to Singapore. So then you focus and you do that. Then you do the next one, and you do the third one, you do the fourth one, because it requires customization. When you do something like Antler, it doesn't actually require customization per se, because what we're doing and the ideas that we believe in and the way we support people is kind of fundamentally similar all across the globe. It requires exceptional individuals that are as good or better than yourself to take on new markets. If you look at some of the partners who run the US or Southeast Asia or our European countries in Antler, you look at their profile, it's much stronger and better than mine. So the scaling part there becomes dependent on this singular component, which is finding an incredible leader that is better than myself, right? To lead that new location. If you don't have that, you should launch. If you have that, you should launch not only that location, but any other location which is big enough and exciting enough where you have such an individual. So I think those are kind of my major two learnings. I think the other thing is the thing that I also mentioned earlier, which is just, you know, you also touched on, I think, very succinctly, and you said it even better than I did. It's just, you know, ensure that you have an idea that is scalable, and then if it isn't, then don't try to scale it. Then either come up with something new that you're going to build next time and scale, or focus in on doing what you have and making it even better.
All right, I see we're going full circle here then. Magnus, I have to ask you the two questions then. From the three traits that you believe make an entrepreneur, what's your spike and what's your drive?
On the spike side, I'll get to that after. On the drive side, I think it's you, as you go through life, you should focus on making your passion more and more aligned with what you spend your majority of your time on, right? And if you think through that in the macro perspective, when you were in primary school, sure, a lot of people enjoy going to primary school, but I don't think it's like fully aligned with their passion, right? It's probably a lot of people would have liked playing in the forest or you know, playing football or whatever instead of going to school. But it's you're still somewhat passionate about it, and it's part of that journey. And then after that, you might do the military or you go to university, and in university you choose what you study. So your passion is a little bit closer to what you spend your time on. And then you get a job, and you know, most people have some sort of choice in their job, and it goes a little bit closer. And you should aim through life to at some point of time have the match, right? And that's what I feel now with Antler is my passion is 100% aligned with what I spend the majority of my time doing. And it's the first time, right? It is, and you know, I was 37 when I launched Antler. It's the first time you have a complete match. In Zalora, it was almost a match. In McKinsey, it was, you know, a little bit less of a match, but a great match. At Harvard, it was, you know, an even less match, but still a great match. You know, in Marine, in Commando, similar. And that's how life progresses. And I think everyone should aim to progress their life in that way, if they can. I know I've been privileged to go on that journey, but I think as far as people can, they should try to do that. And once you have them completely matching, then the drive just becomes inherent. It's just like, yeah, you want to spend your time on what you're passionate about, right? And I don't think anyone should demand that it happens right now, because you need to learn things and you need to get to a level where you can actually do that. But you should think through, I think everyone should have like a 1 year, 5 year, and a 10-year plan where they think about what they want to accomplish at work, professionally, what they want to accomplish in their personal life, what they perhaps want to accomplish, you know, health-wise, and these types of things, new skills they want to learn. And I think if you just ensure that plan gets closer and closer to where at some point of time your passion fully aligns with what you spend your time on, then the drive is automatic. That's number one. Then in terms of spike, I think I'm pretty good at bringing together great people around the common vision.
But that's a really tough one, isn't it? I mean, how do you actually bring people together around a common vision and a common goal?
I think there are a few things. So I think first of all, you need to set a vision which is well worth doing, right? That other incredible people would be excited about pursuing. And that could be a lot of different things because, hey, there's a lot of different niches out there, right? I mean, there's a really interesting company in Stockholm called Fish Brain or something like this, which is a tremendous network of sports fishers. And I never knew that community was so big. So, it just needs to be big enough that you can bring with you enough people who share that passion, right? And the second thing is, you need to value and take care of the great relationships you form throughout your life, right? So if you think about it, on our global advisory board, we have Larry Summers, who used to be the president of Harvard, and he was the secretary of treasury for Bill Clinton.
Wow.
He's an incredible guy. And it's been very impactful for us. And I met him when I was a student taking one of his seminars as a college student in the US. And I remained in contact with him. And at some point of time, I was in a position to offer him something that he was excited about contributing to. And at the same time, he would be very impactful back, right? But if I hadn't maintained some sort of contact, which is not much, it's just kind of an email every second year or so, that would have been more difficult. And it's the same with a lot of the people that we brought into the Antler ecosystem is not directly sometimes. It's not someone that you knew from before, but through someone who you had that relationship with. So I think whenever you meet people where you share the common values with, or you find them incredibly intriguing, or you think somehow that this will be a valuable kind of long-term relationship for you, then value that and treasure that and nurture it. And then at some point in time in the future, there will be an opportunity to kind of create joint value together. So that's, I think, is the second thing. So I mean, what does it boil down to? Like, set a proper vision, and secondly, take care of people around you, and not only think about now, but think about the life as a lifetime, right? I mean, there is I know there are relationships that I've formed in the past where there are people who will be meaningful for Antler in the future that we haven't even kind of tapped into yet. So those are just, I think, a few pieces of advice.
Mate, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. Anything else you'd like to share with the audience?
Yeah, no, I think just of the end of that, just I think this year is obviously an incredible year. We're going through these kind of fundamental changes in the world, and the biggest kind of humanitarian crisis that we've seen in a very long time, and it's kind of our generational kind of moment in a way to step up and have a real impact. And so we're obviously in the business of supporting exceptional people, build great things, solving new problems, and all that. And I think if anyone out there who's listening to this is thinking about stepping in to that journey and doing that right now, we'd love to support you. So just go to antler.co and submit an application. And if you're not interested in doing it with us, go and do it anyways. Because if you're thinking about it now and you've done so for years, if you haven't, if it was important to do it last year, this year you always have an obligation to do it, right? So I would just kind of, it's a big call to everyone out there to, go out, innovate, create those new jobs, create that value that the world now needs, and become kind of part of the path to recovery.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for watching this episode. Make sure to like the video and subscribe to our channel if you got some value from it. It really helps us ranking and deliver more high quality content for you. A few takeaways I love from this. The main thing really is the 3 traits that make an entrepreneur. Having a drive, having a spike, and that perseverance, that grit that makes you not give up when the going gets tough, and it'll inevitably do so because we all know it's a roller coaster. This is what's coming up in the next episode.
So what we learned pretty fast is that we have to find a niche for ourselves. We have to find a place where, or a group of users that we could steal out of PowerPoint. We think of our marketing budget as a 80% direct response. That's stuff that drives traffic and conversions and sales, and 20% brand awareness. That's stuff that we can't measure, that we can't count, but that these breakthrough videos are the ones that push the channel forward because they're the gateway to a lot of people discovering you and potentially coming and binge watching the other videos. And that, I think that that's what the YouTube algorithm gets fed on.
So thanks again for watching. I'm Matt C. Smith. This is Lunicorn on YouTube. I'll see you in the next video.